Next, I'd like to talk about different types of agriculture in California and, types of crops specifically. We can look at two different types. Specialty crops are those that are more like fruits and what we call truck crops. Those are vegetables grown for export, onions, garlic, that type of thing. Grapes, table wine, raisins, and then we also have livestock and dairy. California is the largest milk producer in the United States, and it also has extensive livestock. Livestock is also an important commodity in California, and livestock uses a wide area of open land. It also has some ecological benefits. There are some places in California that have exotic weeds and grasses, and livestock is also a way to help control those as well. So here's an example of table grapes in the western San Joaquin Valley. This is a new, probably an almond orchard developing. Almonds have recently, and pistachios, these types of nuts have become increasingly important commodity in California. And before the drought, they were coming up new orchards all over the place, replacing a lot of existing types of other crops. If we look at the distribution, Fresno County is really big, along with Madera County for raisins and other orchards, and truck crops in the western San Joaquin Valley. And then there's also other orchards all around the Central Valley, and grapes, especially in places like Napa, Northern California, and so on. Grazing land is important as well. So when it comes to cattle, we have both dairies, but also open, grazing in open grassy areas, or what we call rangeland. This figure is showing the difference between a heavily grazed area on the left and a less grazed area on the right. And we've talked about endangered species in the past, and a lot of endangered species really benefit from this heavier grazing. While it may not look as pretty, it helps to maintain an open landscape for a lot of California's native species. Oftentimes there's too much of this type of grass, and so the cattle help to control it. Other types of crops include what we call field crops: cotton, alfalfa, which is used to make hay for animals. And those are often what we call a monoculture, that you have a single crop grown over a large area. And that helps to reduce cost, because if you have cotton over a very large area, then a single harvester can just range over a wide area, and it helps to keep costs low. Now, these are areas where we have field crops and grains, so throughout the Central Valley. One that I'll highlight here is rice. Rice is really important in Northern California, in the Sacramento Valley. And other pasture crops include alfalfa, other field crops in places like Kings County and western San Joaquin County. That can include cotton, alfalfa, and other things. So this is an example of a field crop. So these are produced annually. They're grown, harvested, and they start all over again the next year. That's a bit different than an orchard or a vineyard, because those have to be maintained each year. This is a wheat crop in example of dryland farming, a place where that is no longer able to be irrigated because of the lack of water. But in some places, dryland farming can produce a little bit of crop. Now, the top commodities, at least legal commodities, we'll explain that in a moment, in California as of 2018, the biggest one is milk and dairy. That's about 6-point-something billion. Grapes not far behind, all kinds of grapes, wine and table grapes, 6-and-something billion. Almonds have come up recently. They're catching up to grapes. Cattle and pistachios, but pistachios being another new nut crop that's been increasingly important in California. Those are big crops as well. There is one other important crop, and that has to do with a place called the Emerald Triangle. That's something from your book. I'd like you to kind of note that. And the Emerald Triangle is this part of Northern California, which has historically been an important agricultural area, even though it's not shown on the map, for marijuana crops. And that this used to be, has traditionally been the place where that has been heavily produced while illegal. Now with the legalization of marijuana in California, it's more complicated, and there are other places where you have important growing, both legal and illegal. But one thing I'll highlight is that when we talk about commodities, that it's often not included, but if we did, that it would actually way surpass the other legal commodities, such as milk, grapes, and so on. That the marijuana industry is a huge part of the agriculture of California, although a lot of it is somewhat still underground because it used to be illegal. However, it is an important part of the economy of California. So a few things just to wrap up. A few things to note about California. Agriculture in California is highly diverse. A lot of that has to do with its Mediterranean climate. We've discussed in the past that dry summers help to produce crops like almonds and grapes. And also its diverse physical geography, as we've discussed in the past, with its different types of landscapes, provide different types of habitats, both for natural things, but also for crops as well. There's elements of its physical geography, such as the deep soils of the Central Valley, that make it productive. And also, it's the ability of irrigation. Now, the San Joaquin Valley is very dry, but we have irrigation because of water supplies from the Sierra Nevada. So as we've discussed, the hydrology, the water supply in California is integrated in producing the farmland.